We saw an interview of Rahul Gandhi in United Kingdom. That interview was taken, which has now gone viral, by Shruti Kapila, who is an associate assistant professor at the Cambridge University, London. I have with me Shruti Kapila herself to give us an understanding on how she receives all that video that's gone viral, particularly among the right-wing groups who seem to be quite riled up with the interview and the interviewee. We also have Pallavi Saha, who's tracking all those developments on ground, giving us a perspective on the kind of outrage that this interview has really sparked. Thank you very much, Shruti, for joining us. If you can take off on this introduction I just gave. Right-wing groups not very happy in the country, and we know the kind of clout they hold at this point today. They are outraged with the questions asked and with the answers Rahul Gandhi gave. How would you, sitting in the United Kingdom and as part of your university who organized this interview, receive this kind of criticism?
So at one level, thank you for asking me. At one level, it's total amusement. I'm completely bemused that, a perfectly sober, real, authentic conversation that took place in Cambridge, which is special to Rahul Gandhi, and this was an invitation long in the making, evokes this kind of response. But more seriously, I think it is disappointing, as it is dangerous for Indian democracy to be fed information which becomes selective and which, in a way, represents the opposite of what happened. So I think particularly the clip around when he took time to respond on his father's death, which was actually excised in these WhatsApp clips. You don't see the question. You just see the question of violence and non-violence. But my question was really, because I grew up in the Punjab, so my question was like, look, my generation, your generation have witnessed a lot of collective violence. And in your case, it's personal. And he took time. I mean, this is something pretty hard to have gone through. And he stepped back and, was perhaps a bit emotional, I would say, wanted to collect his thoughts, wanted to collect his emotions. And, and then that completely was misrepresented. For the rest, I think, the questions asked were very challenging. This was not a cute interview where, I was asking him, what is his favorite mango? Is it from UP or is it from Goa? It was a real serious conversation on China, on Ukraine, on post-COVID economy in the world, quite apart from what's going on in India and the Congress party.
Shruti, but did he level up?
The points, I'm sorry, Nabila, go ahead.
Yeah, go on, Pallavi. Pallavi, in fact, has been tracking the kind of outrage. Pallavi, right ahead. What questions people are asking is, did Rahul Gandhi really level up? That was the question, First of all, what was the intention of Cambridge to hold an interview with Rahul Gandhi? What were you looking forward to from Rahul? And besides, did he really live up to expectations? Pallavi, over to you. Go on.
Well, see, this sort of an interaction, Nabila, has happened in the past as well. Rahul Gandhi has been visiting universities over the years. And of course, he's been to UC Berkeley, he's been to Cambridge now.
No, hasn't been to Cambridge.
He's been, now in May 2022, I meant. So, he has been, of course, having these sort of interactions as well. And of course, there have been headlines that have been coming out of these interactions as well, when he's basically said that, India is, the society is getting more and more polarized. It's not inclusive anymore. He's, of course, taken pot shots at the present-day regime as well, saying that this is the regime which is exacerbating the situation on the ground as well. Shruti, the question that I wanted to ask you, because you say that, people were unfair and the clip was, the question wasn't quite, audible to people. They didn't hear the question and why he took as much time that he did in order to sort of answer your question. But then at one point while there is that awkward silence, if you may, you say, I probably got you stumped. I've got you stumped probably. Yeah. And people use that as well, that, your question was such a difficult one that, Rahul Gandhi is incapable of, allegedly, or competent enough to articulate his thoughts or take on that question, Shruti.
I don't think it is that. I think it was too close to comfort. It's a question I asked about personal loss and grievance, personal loss and harm, losing your father, losing your grandmother during your kind of early years. But also at another level, I had asked a second order question, which is like, how do you analyze the role of violence in Indian society? So I think there were two registers to the question. So he stepped back and he actually gave a very good Gandhian answer. To my view, because I believe in Gandhi, he actually immediately said forgiveness. And, to go back to Nabila's point, Actually, the interview has gone down very well. I mean, very senior academics, university leadership was in the audience, quite apart from the Indian students. And the thing about the Indian students was, as I said, this was not like a kind of contained invitation list. There were lots of hostile, antagonistic questions from the audience. In fact, I think I would say 70% of the questions were unsympathetic to Rahul Gandhi, which he answered with kind of, actually rather well. So
in your view, he did level up. He turned out to expectations.
He absolutely leveled up. I actually thought it was super refreshing to have a real, authentic conversation with a major leader on topics which are on everyone's mind. Big tech is on Biden's mind. It's not just on, Rahul Gandhi's mind. Or the fact that, what is going to happen with kind of protectionism and the rise of China. These are questions actually no one has ready answers to. And so he took a good stab at it. He was clear, he was thoughtful. And as I said, it was real. It wasn't like, rehearsed. It wasn't kind of, something that, it was, I dare say, it was not on a teleprompter.
And speaking so it was human. Of it not being rehearsed, you had BJP Palmi taking jibes left, right and center, saying you stick to a scripted script, a planned script, don't deviate, because we know how Congress's part and parcel nature is to defame India on international platforms. And one part of that is also that Rahul Gandhi is incapable of answering the right way. That was the BJP's view.
That is something Shruti can answer.
Okay, so there are two questions. So I'm going to answer, Palami, your first thing. No, I mean, the thing is, I had, the thing is, you're faced with two very different leadership styles. You have a leader who is asked in interviews, about mangoes and other cutesy questions like that, and never really asked the hard questions. So you have full devotion to one leader, and then the social media backs that kind of devotion to that leader. And then you have another leader who actually doesn't rehearse, wants to have a real conversation. He's sitting in Cambridge. After all, we are not anywhere else. We're sitting with an academic audience with very bright students, and you are being asked real questions. So of course he's going to be thoughtful. No, so the questions were really very much on the cuff. We wanted to go from 75 years to now, but also wanted to talk about China, which he had also raised in London. And I think that those are interesting they were interesting topics. I think Nabila was asking a different question about whether this was set. I mean, this is not about defaming India. I mean, doesn't this defame India that you kind of mock a leader who is actually talking about his grief? I mean, these are values, really. I mean, given that now digital information crosses boundaries, this is something that people have picked up here. So I actually think that the polarized atmosphere of particularly political information has degraded public conversation in India. So we can laugh about, we can mock this, and you can make memes. I have this kind of now, the idea that I have become a meme is like quite uncomfortable, discomforting for me. And my friend sent it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this was a fairly serious formal occasion. And where very tough questions were asked in an open forum where lots of students who were actually sympathetic to the BJP were also asking questions. So I think, I think that's why I think, jokes apart, this is pretty serious. This is about the nature and the future of public debate in India.
And Shruti, you're right, okay, it is serious.
Sorry, Nabila.
Yeah, no, go on, Palmi. Certainly, Palmi, since you track the BJP certainly didn't receive this well, because, you had Rahul Gandhi falling short of saying the word fascist, but he said everything around it. He said that, the BJP is not inclusive. They're completely exclusive. They do not work for the people of the country. They're only working for a certain few. They've literally poured kerosene all over the country. One spark could have an explosion. This is what we're seeing India in the near brink of burning. That's more or less what Rahul Gandhi said, which has really enraged the BJP cadre and a large right-wing population in the country. Palmi, your question on those lines, here clearly Rahul Gandhi, as the country largely looks at it, is that you're presenting a negative and a wrong picture of India abroad.
Well, yes, that has been the BJP's criticism, Nabila, for a while about Rahul Gandhi it's not just what he speaks at international fora, really. It's also about what he tweets. Obviously, even, any of his international trips abroad, they make news. So obviously, he is a personality that the BJP is constantly monitoring, that the BJP is constantly taking pot shots at. And of course, they believe that he is not someone who's basically providing any sort of solutions, is not trying to, if he says that there is this problem with, how things are in the country right now, why isn't he providing solutions? All he's doing is defaming the country. All he's doing is saying that everything is absolutely wrong with the country, and especially at prestigious international fora. And he should be a little bit more circumspect about what he says and how he frames his words, etc. Of course, Rahul Gandhi categorically has stated, even in the Cambridge conversation, and he's stated in the past as well, that my idea is not to take pot shots at an individual. I'm not exactly targeting an individual or a particular party. What I'm saying is the climate of the country has become such because of a certain, certain kind of ideology or certain kind of hate politics, quote unquote, which is being pushed down, people and the environment. And that is his criticism. In fact, Shruti, I just want to put this, want you to put this out there. We were discussing this earlier as well, but want you to put this out there as well, because you said you've become a meme as well, and you've become yourself a topic of conversation. Are you a card-carrying member of the Congress party?
No, I'm a card-carrying member of no party. The only thing I carry a card of is the universities union here. And we went on strike when our pensions were taken away. And that's really my own, and that's actually my profession's card. It's my profession's union. So I carry no political party membership either in Britain or in India. I think that's partly the reason this question gets asked is because I think the debate is public debate in India is so lopsided. And the other side is that the right wing is hypersensitive to any criticism. So you have to be you don't have to always just praise India. I mean, criticism is seen as an insult, but actually criticism is essential to progress and creativity for any endeavor. My students come into my room, you read their essays, you don't just give them an A+ and say, well done, you. You actually say, well, actually, this is, could be done, this could be done better. And that's just, and I think that's the work of the opposition. The work of the opposition, especially since Parliament has not been able to hold the ruling party to accountability, you have to then find new forums to do it, whether it is the social media or whether it is international fora. And it's not exactly breaking news what he is saying. This is also the stuff of international editorials. People are genuinely concerned about the nature of freedom of expression, the democratic robustness of India at the moment, whether it's the Freedom Index in Norway. These are ongoing discussions. It's not coming out of context, or it's not simply party political. It is actually much deeper as to what is the drift and direction India is going into, and what might be its costs if we did that. So I actually didn't think that, this was actually defaming India. If anything, he was rather quite restrained, I thought, on the question of China. My colleagues who were in the audience, who are China experts, said, well, that was terribly diplomatic, because he actually took a pretty, middle of the road line on China vis-a-vis India, while actually talking about India's concerns. So I don't think, actually, people don't hear, people have forgotten the art of listening and debating. And they want big slogans which they can digest and circulate, and it's become like advertising rather than actually political debate at the moment in India. And that's why this sort of sounds very it sounds hatke, if I can put it like that. It's a bit too serious, and that's why it has to be kind of then broken down into these memes and mocked mocked in the ways it has been mocked. But it was a pretty serious debate. He made some excellent points on certainly global digital economy, mass information
Shruti,
in the world.
He particularly also spoke about India being a union of states, and that seems to have resonated. It may not be in the right way, but how would you, in your view, do you think Rahul Gandhi sees India with that statement?
Okay, so let me sort of hold back and say, I teach a course on Indian democracy here, a very successful, quite a serious course on Indian democracy. And we actually look at it from the foundations in the anti-colonial struggle to the present. And the debate on federalism is an important debate. Now, of course, Patel has become a resurrected figure, but people forget that the work that he did was to stitch up these union of states. right? It wasn't simply that, he got India unity, which of course he's credited with, but that the negotiated nature of Indian. So I think it was not simply, I think the person who asked the question then deliberately led the question in one way to say this was a binary or this was an opposition. I mean, it was very clear to the audience what Rahul Gandhi was saying was that Indian nationality or nationhood is a stitching up of union of states. And that if you try and impose something very unilaterally on it, it will make it fragile. And it goes back to the 75th year, goes back to when the union was formed. I mean, everything in India seems to be, the criticism was, oh, well, he doesn't think about it in terms of the nation. No, he was actually saying the root of Indian nationality is very different from Europe. It's on the scale of Europe, and it has had to achieve unity at the scale of Europe plus. Plus, what is that it entailed was stitching up the states as a union. But of course, as I said, this is, you have very active social media armies in India. And, you can take things out of context, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of degrading that takes place. But actually, people are not degrading an individual. They're degrading the political culture of India. And that too, people should worry about how that comes across in the international press and the international world.
Great. It was lovely talking to you. Paulmi, you have anything more?
No, I just the final question. I mean, just taking off what you've been talking about, so the comparison that he drew that India is not exactly like a United Kingdom, not a nation, but more like a European Union, Union of States. How your comments on this?
I mean, I think it's actually for academics, but also it's entirely, unprovocative. Because we are all trying, the study of nation states is a very mainstream topic of, undergraduate curriculums and the like. And it's a fact. The nation state is not much older than 200 years old. Of course, nations have existed in terms of, kingdoms or large realms, but the modern nation state, as we understand, is only 200 to 300 years old tops. And he was actually arguing that the scale of India is the scale of Europe plus, rather than United Kingdom, which can then be, stitched up. But even if you look at it in United Kingdom, you have Wales, you have Scotland, you have, Northern Ireland. I mean, these are devolved entities. And I couldn't understand why this would react so much. It only speaks to this rather hyper-exclusionary idea that is being propagated in Indian politics, that we must have, one language, one religion. There's a kind of Hindu first agenda that it speaks to. And I think that was very clear that this was what Mr. Gandhi was opposing.
Right, Shruti, thank you very much.